Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek and I have a fun and exciting bonus Mr. video for you guys tonight, and that is because there is a brand new in testing System 11 FPGA core. And if you're wondering what System 11 is, it's basically the PlayStation 1 in arcades, but it does have some arcade exclusives and even some games like Tekken and Tekken 2. They got upgrades compared to what you actually saw on PlayStation 1, and honestly, more PlayStation 1 FPGA cores are always going to be a fun time. Now, this is done by developer XelaNotPu. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly because it's definitely one of the more challenging ones, and it's basically taking the foundation of the PlayStation 1 FPGA core the Raptor FPGA Zoom Spots worked on and pivoting over to actually work on the arcade variants. And just so you know, System 11 is very similar to a real PlayStation 1, but it does have more RAM and a different sound chip. Once you get to System 12, Capcom ZN1 and 2, and Taito GNet, you have a spec of PlayStation 1 class hardware that is well beyond what an actual console can be, but you're definitely going to be seeing more of this stuff coming over soon, and it's one of those things. Back when the core was in development, maybe late 2023 to early 2024, I talked about the fact that the Mr. FPGA core could run at least some of the PlayStation 1 based arcade hardware because it was so similar, and it's just that Robert the developer wasn't really interested in arcade games and always left it as the possibility of somebody else to pick it up and do it. Well, that's what the developer has done here now. Tekken as well as Tekken 2 and a few other games are going to be working, and I will leave a link in the description below to the GitHub repo, because right now, before you ask, this is manual install only, and that is definitely going to be something that if you're familiar with Mr. shouldn't be that big of an issue whatsoever. But if you do want to play Tekken or Tekken 2, pay attention to the directions, because this game has a ton of different variants, so you want to make sure you have the right files from your totally legally owned Tekken arcade PCBs. All jokes aside, I have both of these PCBs in my closet because you know full well I'm an idiot like that. But honestly, this is going to be the foundation for a lot of exciting stuff in the future, because there's so many different PlayStation 1 arcade boards out there that could work on Mr. FPGA that just don't have the code yet. If we go down the line, Namco System 11 and 12, Capcom ZN1 and 2, a bunch of Konami boards like the Baby Phoenix as well as the Konami GX, which runs one game and one game only, Crypt Killer, and of course the Taito GNet, which has a ton of fun as well. And they should all technically work within the confines of what Mr. FPGA is, because a lot of the arcade boards don't utilize all of the same components that the actual console PlayStation 1 would, and they could be removed from the FPGA code if fitment and the logic elements is an issue, but I don't really think that would actually buffer up until you got to stuff like maybe Capcom ZN2 or the Taito GNet. But honestly, getting the arcade versions of Tekken and Tekken 2 as well as Soul Edge working in this core is just 10 out of 10 fun, and this is something that's really going to expand upon the overall Mr. ecosystem, because there's not just games that you played on console that are enhanced like the Tekkens here, but there's also going to be arcade exclusives on the Namco System 11 that you can play. And even though we have all three games already available on something like Mr. FPGA and the PlayStation 1 core, the Point Blank games are also on this board, and they are still some of the best arcade games ever made. So it is just a really exciting future. Now, as far as the performance of the core is concerned, it is running at full speed. Every once in a while you'll hear a sound effect go missing, but otherwise this feels like 95% to 98% buttoned up and ready to go. And as far as if this is going to come to update all, I'm really not sure yet. Usually when the developers feel like it's ready for inclusion, that will happen. But if you've never installed a core manually on Mr., it is as easy as dragging and dropping files into the specific folders, which you can get direction on in the GitHub. So if you can copy and paste or drag and drop a file on your PC, you can manually install a core on Mr. Trust me, a lot of people think it's a very complicated process. It's no different than dragging a file over to USB stick and unplugging it, except it is a micro SD card. But again, the performance here in Tekken and Tekken 2 working seriously well, and I just love to see this sort of progress, because I love arcade boards. I've got a ton of PlayStation 1 based arcade boards in the closet, and honestly my dream would be to see Konami GX with Crypt Killer available on Mr. just so I can play that on my 4K OLED TV versus having to use my PVM and original arcade board. Let's go into the first of two soundtrack samples, starting off with the original Tekken, and I'll be right back with a lot more news on this amazing new core. Now, I'm sure you can tell from that soundtrack sample that the music in and of itself is working correctly, but sometimes the sound effects are not playing consistently. I'm not sure if that's an audio buffer issue or if it's just incomplete FPGA code, because again, the Namco board here is using different sound hardware than a stock PlayStation 1. But I'm sure the dev on this one is going to continually update this core until we get to the point where it's indistinguishable between FPGA code and actual real hardware, minus the fact that you can't get HDMI signals out of one of these arcade boards. Well, I mean, technically maybe you could with some mods, but I don't think everyone's ever tried, and I'm certainly not going to either. And I will say, even though the PlayStation 1 aesthetic is definitely chunky with a lot of big pixels, it is still one that holds up. And because both Tekken and Tekken 2 are some incredible games, it's really fun to have these here. And as far as if we're going to be getting other FPGA cores for PlayStation-based hardware, I've seen a little bit of movement on the Konami Baby Phoenix or GV, but that's something I haven't talked about yet just because it was Simpsons Bowling. I didn't really think that was all that exciting for a video, because the GV may be one of the least exciting PlayStation 1 based arcade boards out there. But if you have tested that core, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. And big thanks to Kilter Music as well for helping with some of the captures on this one while I was working on something that you saw at 4 p.m. The entirety of the new Dolphin and GameCube Recomp base suite. But again, this is just the stuff I've loved because I am a massive arcade hardware fan and a massive arcade collector, and when something like this is finished, then those boards that I have for Tekken I may very well sell. And honestly, they're not even that valuable. You can get a Tekken or Tekken 2 board for still pretty cheap these days, and that's just because they were insanely popular in arcades, so a lot of cabinets were sold, and a lot of those boards still ended up working in collectors' hands. So that's one of the nice things. If you ever want to get into arcade collecting, some of these boards are really easy mode. Grab yourself a super gun or a cabinet, grab a Tekken 2 board, and you can honestly get everything done for underneath like $500 minus the cabinet. But as far as the graphics are concerned here, everything looks exactly like it should, outside of a few textures that load in ever so slightly too slow, and you have to be pretty eagle-eyed to spot those in the capture when the round starts. And as far as the control input and latency, it's FPGA, you know full well it's going to feel great, and that's exactly what it does feel like. This is every bit as good on the control department as plugging in an original board on a CRT television, or in my instance a PVM, and just sitting down and playing it. If you do have an arcade stick for your Mister, 10 out of 10 can't recommend enough. It is just the preferred way for me to play. And honestly, I use the TR Octopus Fight Stick, and it's been great for every single arcade core Mister has to offer. But basically, anything you bring along for the party is going to be better than a controller with a D-pad, at least in my opinion. And if you do use an arcade stick for Mister, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you're using. There's so many different ones out there. I always love to hear what it is you guys prefer and why. And if you have tested this core, leave me your thoughts as well, because this one is still new and fresh, and I feel like 99 out of 100 people watching this are not going to know it existed. But we've done a soundtrack sample for the original Tekken. Now let's move over to Tekken 2, and you saw there in the back of Nina just a few of those glitches. But listen, and I'll be right back with more. So I'd say of the games here, Tekken 2 is the most buttoned up because you're going to get the sound effects all the time and the audio is correct as well. And stuff like Point Blank 2, it's going to boot, but there's not yet light gun implementation in the core, so you're not actually going to be able to play the game because this Namco System 11 core for Mister, it's still early in development. The fact that it's doing this good a job this early is a testament to how impressive it's going to be when it's actually finished up. And if you know me and you know the channel, you know I love my FPGA hardware, you know I love my arcade board, so anytime we can combine the two together, especially in the 3D realm, it's going to be outstanding because we really don't have many things whatsoever on the arcade side that are utilizing 3D, and PlayStation 1 arcade boards are a great place to start. Of course, we do have the Sega Titan Video STV core for Mister as well, and it's in conjunction with the Saturn core, but that's just because those are basically the exact same hardware minus cartridges. But sure of that, if you want to test this one today, the link is in the description below, and the GitHub provides comprehensive directions on what files to download and then where to put them in the folders. So definitely just pay attention to the directions, don't skip over anything, and you should be successfully playing some really fun arcade-based PlayStation 1 games on your Mister today. Sure of that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go check this one out, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.